All right, let's dive into this. We're talking strong bones today. And how to keep calcium where it belongs, not in our arteries.
Right.
Yeah, so we're going to untangle this whole thing with calcium. Vitamins D3 and K2. Oh, and magnesium too.
Can't forget magnesium.
Nope. And we'll see how this all connects to your health. We've got a research article to dig into, plus some YouTube videos with doctors, some are GPs, and we even have some foot doctors in the mix.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think a lot of people have these misconceptions about calcium, especially
Yeah.
when it comes to bone health.
Totally. Like this whole calcium paradox, we hear all the time about osteoporosis, bone loss. You'd think we just aren't getting enough calcium.
Right.
But then on the other hand, there's this talk about calcium buildup in our arteries. So is it too much calcium or not enough? It's confusing.
It really is.
Yeah.
It's not just about how much calcium you take in. The real key is how your body actually uses it. And that's where things like vitamin K2 come in. It's like, think of them as traffic cops, directing calcium to the right places in your body.
Okay, so let's talk vitamin K2, the unsung hero, right? I feel like I've always heard about vitamin K, but that was for blood clotting. K2 specifically seems like the secret weapon for those healthy bones.
Yeah, you're right. Vitamin K is actually like a family of vitamins. You get K1, that's your clotting one. But for bones and calcium, K2 is the one you want to keep in mind.
Got it. Now, in one of the YouTube videos, Understanding Vitamin K2, they mention this researcher, Weston Price. He was way back studying traditional diets
Oh, yeah.
decades ago. He saw that some cultures had incredibly strong bones, like off the charts, strong. And he thought, there's got to be something else going on.
Mm.
So he called this mystery factor Activator X. Get this. Years later, scientists figured out Activator X. That's vitamin K2.
It's pretty fascinating. Right? Sometimes those old school ideas, they actually turn out to be onto something.
For sure. Okay, so break it down for me. What exactly does K2 do that's so important?
Well, vitamin K2, it activates these two proteins in your body, osteocalcin and matrix GLA protein. Now, osteocalcin, think of them like tiny little construction workers.
I like it.
They're carrying calcium, like little bricks, to build those strong bones.
Okay.
But they need K2 to do their job right.
Okay. That makes sense for getting calcium to the bones. But what about keeping it out of my arteries?
That's where that other protein, matrix GLA protein, comes in. This one's like a security guard,
Okay.
bouncing calcium from places it shouldn't be, like your arteries and soft tissues.
Got it. So if I don't have enough K2, even if I am getting enough calcium, it could be like hardening my arteries instead of building bones.
Exactly. And that brings us right back to that calcium paradox.
Yeah.
You'd be losing bone, but at the same time having calcium build up in your arteries. Not a good combo.
Yeah. No thanks. All right. So we know K2 is crucial. But what about vitamin D3? I know that one's important for absorbing calcium, but where does it fit into all of this?
So vitamin D3, it's like the key. Unlocks the door for calcium absorption in your gut. But without enough K2 as that traffic cop, that calcium might not get to the right places.
Okay, so I'm picturing this. D3 brings the calcium to the party, and K2 makes sure it gets to the dance floor, not just hanging out by the coat check.
I love that analogy. They work together, right? D3 helps you absorb that calcium. K2 makes sure it's used right.
Now, this reminds me of something we found in our research, the French paradox. The French, they eat a lot of saturated fat, but they have lower rates of heart disease than other cultures. Could K2 be a factor here?
That's an interesting thought. Remember, K2 is found in animal fats, especially grass-fed animals. Those are often the kind of fats we're told to avoid for heart health.
Hmm.
But maybe we need to rethink that message.
Hmm.
You know,
And it's not just those animal fats. The French, they love their cheese, sauerkraut, all those fermented foods, which are also good sources of K2.
right. And it just shows you nutrition isn't always simple. There's a lot of nuance, a lot more going on than just following some basic diet advice.
Totally agree. Speaking of nuance, one of our sources really emphasized magnesium, which feels like it doesn't get as much attention as calcium or those K vitamins, but it sounds like it plays a crucial supporting role.
Absolutely. Magnesium, it's so important. But people do overlook it. It's crucial for a lot of how your body works, including how you use vitamins D and K. So if those are our main actors, think of magnesium as the stage manager, making sure the whole show runs smoothly.
I love that. And the Michigan foot doctors, they mention magnesium deficiency is super common these days.
Yeah, and unfortunately, that's true. Modern diets, our lifestyles, they often don't give us enough magnesium.
Okay, so we've been talking about getting all these nutrients from our diet, but what about calcium supplements? Are they even necessary or even helpful?
That's a good question, and it's one that people debate a lot. Calcium is clearly essential for bone health. But the research on supplements, that's not so straightforward.
I think a lot of people assume, well, if a little calcium's good, more must be better, especially when it comes to preventing bone loss.
Right. But our bodies are complex. And research from that scientific article, along with what those Michigan foot doctors were saying, they cited studies that suggest taking calcium supplements alone doesn't really work that well for preventing fractures.
Hmm.
You know,
And even more concerning, they said taking too much calcium, especially from supplements, could actually lead to kidney stones and even heart problems. Yikes.
exactly. And remember, if you don't have enough K2 to direct it, that calcium might end up in your arteries instead of your bones.
So are you saying we should all toss our calcium supplements? What's the takeaway here?
I'm not saying make any big changes without talking to your doctor, first of all.
Mhm.
But research suggests focus on getting calcium from your diet. Make sure you're getting enough D3, K2, and magnesium, whether that's from food or supplements. That might actually be a better, safer approach to bone health than just relying on those calcium supplements.
That makes sense. Now, those Michigan foot doctors even shared what they do for their own supplements, which I thought was really interesting.
Yeah, it's always helpful to hear what works for others, but it's important to remember everyone's different. What works for one person might not be right for you. So talking to your doctor before you make any big changes to your supplements, that's key. They can help you figure out the best plan for your own health history and your risk factors.
That's great advice. So, before we move on, let's do a quick recap of the key points we've covered so far about the relationship between these four nutrients.
Okay, so we started with that calcium paradox. Remember, that whole thing where someone could have weak bones but also have calcium building up in their arteries.
Yeah, it really shows how it's not just about, like, getting enough calcium.
Right.
It's about making sure it goes to the right places,
Yeah.
building up those bones, not causing trouble in your arteries.
Exactly. And that's where vitamin K2 comes in,
Right.
activating those two proteins we talked about, osteocalcin and matrix GLA protein. Osteocalcin, those are like our little construction workers, building up bone with
I
calcium.
like those little guys.
And then matrix GLA protein, they're like our security guards,
Yeah.
keeping calcium out of places it shouldn't be.
Got it. So, no calcium loitering in the arteries.
Exactly.
Okay, then we got into how vitamin D3 and K2, they're like partners in crime.
Yeah.
D3 helps us absorb the calcium, and then K2 makes sure it actually gets used properly.
Like a well-coordinated team, right?
Yeah.
And then we even talked about how this might explain the French paradox.
Oh, yeah.
That thing where the French, they eat a diet that a lot of people think is high in saturated fat, but they have lower rates of heart disease compared to some other cultures.
It really makes you think.
It does.
So maybe all that K2 they're getting from cheese and butter, maybe that's a factor.
Right. It kind of challenges what we think we know about what's good for your heart. It's complicated.
Totally. And it's not just about the fats either. The French eat a lot of fermented foods too, like cheese, sauerkraut, and those are packed with K2.
Exactly. And it just goes to show you really got to look at the whole picture when it comes to nutrition. There's so much more to it than just following some simple rules.
Absolutely. Okay, and speaking of looking at the whole picture, we can't forget magnesium.
Oh, for sure.
It sometimes feels like the underdog,
It does.
compared to calcium or vitamin K.
Yeah.
But it's crucial.
It is. It's essential for so many things your body does,
Hey.
even helping you properly use vitamins D and K.
Yeah.
Those vitamins are the stars, and magnesium is kind of like the stage manager, making sure everything runs smoothly behind the scenes.
I love that analogy. And it's scary how common magnesium deficiency is.
It really is.
Like the Michigan foot doctor said, modern diets and our busy lifestyles, we just don't get enough.
Right, and that can really affect your health in so many ways.
For sure. Okay, so we've mostly been talking about getting these nutrients from food, but what about supplements? Specifically calcium supplements. Do we really need them? Are they actually good for us?
That's a great question. And to be honest, the answers aren't so simple.
Right.
I mean, we know calcium is super important for strong bones, but the research on calcium supplements isn't as clear. Yeah. A lot of people think, well, if some calcium is good, then more must be even better, especially if you're worried about bone loss.
That seems logical.
It does, but our bodies are way more complex than that.
Right.
And that research article we talked about, along with what those Michigan foot doctors were saying, they brought up studies showing that calcium supplements, by themselves, they don't really work that well for preventing fractures.
Interesting.
Yeah, and even more concerning is that some studies actually suggest that taking too much calcium, especially from supplements, could actually be linked to kidney stones and even heart problems.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and remember, without enough vitamin K2 to kind of direct things, that extra calcium could end up in your arteries instead of your bones. Not good.
So are you saying we should just chuck all our calcium supplements?
I wouldn't say make any big changes without talking to your doctor first. But based on what the research is saying these days, it seems like focusing on getting calcium from your diet and making sure you're getting enough vitamin D3, K2, and magnesium, that might be a better, safer way to keep your bones healthy long term, rather than relying only on those calcium supplements.
Okay, so it's all about balance and a holistic approach, right?
Yeah,
Not just fixating on one nutrient.
exactly. It's about the whole picture. And you know what? This actually brings up a really interesting point that I think our listeners will find fascinating.
Oh, tell me more.
So we've been talking a lot about preventing calcium from going to the wrong places, like our arteries.
Right.
But what if there was actually a way to reverse that process? Like, what if we could actually decalcify our arteries?
Wait, is that even possible? I always thought once you had calcification, that was it.
Yeah, that's what a lot of people think. But there's some really cool research coming out about how certain natural substances, like vitamin K2, might not just prevent further calcification, but possibly even help reverse some of the calcification that's already there in the arteries.
Wow, that's amazing. So you're saying there might be a way to actually undo some of the damage?
It's still early days in terms of the research, and we need more studies to really know for sure, but the early results look really promising, and it's definitely something worth exploring further.
Okay, so what are some of the key things to know about this whole decalcification possibility?
Well, first of all, it's important to remember that this isn't some quick fix or magic bullet. If you're worried about calcification, talk to your doctor. They can help you figure out what's best for your situation.
Makes sense. So how does vitamin K2 fit into all this?
Remember how we talked about matrix GLA protein acting like a security guard, keeping calcium out of our arteries? Well, some researchers believe that K2, because it activates matrix GLA protein, might actually be able to help remove calcium that's already been deposited in the arteries.
So it's like matrix GLA protein is the cleanup crew and K2 is the supervisor telling them where to go.
Exactly. Like
Huh?
sending in reinforcements to clean up those calcium deposits and help the arteries become more flexible again.
That's incredible. So are there any specific foods or supplements that are really high in this matrix GLA protein?
So actually, matrix GLA protein itself, you can't find that in food. It's something our bodies make naturally.
Oh, okay.
We can help our bodies produce and activate more of it by making sure we're getting enough vitamin K2.
Got it. So making sure our K2 levels are good is key for giving our bodies the tools they need to fight calcification.
Exactly. And remember, there are a couple different forms of K2, MK4, that's found mainly in animal products. And then there's MK7, which you find in fermented foods like natto.
And I think from our research, MK7 seems to last longer in the body than MK4.
Right? That's right. So eating a variety of K2-rich foods, or maybe considering a good MK7 supplement, could be a good way to support your arteries.
This is all so fascinating. It's like we're discovering this whole new way to think about protecting our hearts.
It really is.
Yeah.
And it just goes to show how everything in our health is connected. What we eat, the nutrients we absorb, it all has a huge impact on our whole body, from our bones to our arteries and everything in between.
This whole deep dive has been so eye-opening. I'm already thinking about how I can get more K2 in my diet. It's pretty amazing, right? To think we might actually be able to undo some of the damage to our arteries, not just prevent it.
Yeah, it really is hopeful. Our bodies are incredible, give them what they need, and they can really heal, regenerate. It's pretty cool.
This whole conversation has been a real eye-opener. I feel like I have a whole new understanding of calcium, bone health, all of it.
That's great to hear. I always say knowledge is power. The more we understand how our bodies work, the better choices we can make for ourselves,
Oh,
right?
yeah. Absolutely. And speaking of making choices, before we wrap up, gotta remind everyone, talk to your doctor before you change your diet or supplement.
Oh, for sure. Don't try to self-treat. It can be risky. Your doctor knows your specific situation. They can help you make the best decisions for your health.
So do your own research, for sure. Talk to your doctor and make those choices that empower you on your own health journey.
Exactly. And if you're really intrigued by this whole idea of reversing calcification in your arteries, keep learning about it. It's a really exciting area of research. Lots of potential there.
It gives me a lot of hope to think we might be able to undo some of the damage that builds up over time.
Me too. It shows how much power we have when it comes to our health. Through lifestyle choices, through nutrition. It's pretty amazing.
Well, on that note of hope and healing, it's time to wrap up this deep dive. Thanks for joining us, everyone.
It's been a pleasure chatting about all of this with you.
And remember, stay curious. Keep exploring. There's always something new to learn about these incredible bodies of ours.
Take care, everyone, and we'll catch you next time.